Dear brothers, good morning, boys. Made it to Monday. It's going to be a big week. Time to get after it. I'm ready for it. I'm here. We're getting some today. Saturday morning, this past weekend, I was playing doubles tennis in the league that I play in. And in between one of our games, the conversation came up about letting your emotions out when you play tennis. But then it broadly got into a quick conversation on sport. And we've all seen people lose their tempers, and in tennis, they throw their rackets. In football, you've got people hitting the Gatorade cups off, and you've just got in baseball, you see people slam their helmets, the whole nine yards. We've seen all of the tantrums, if you will, that occur in sport. And one of the pieces of guidance that's given to people is that they need to be more stoic. They need to not allow their emotions to overcome them. They shouldn't, they need to harbor their emotion, control their emotion. They need to be flatlined. They're just there. They're never too high. They're never too low. And it's an interesting conversation to have, because I actually think it is true that we need to find the middle ground. But what I have found, specifically with men, is one of two things. We have made the extremes the norms when it comes to emotion. What I mean by that, one extreme is the absolute control by emotion. Sad about everything, overly happy, crying about everything, very anxious, feelings of just so much emotion. Everything is led by emotion. Every decision is led by emotion. Oh, this makes me sad. That means it needs to be fixed. Oh, this makes me happy. I need to do more of that. It is this almost worship of emotion, which we see with quite a lot of men today, is that they think with strictly emotion. And, they feel sad about things that go on around them constantly, yet they don't do anything. But that is kind of the men that we see, and all of you in some capacity know men that fall under that category. They're just overly emotional about everything. So there's that far end. But the end that, and I don't agree with that, but the end that I want to talk about today is this: we have to be extremely stoic, almost apathetic, just no emotion, straightforward, straight ahead. Manly men don't have emotions, men don't cry, the whole nine yards. I would also completely disagree with that mindset, because we don't have emotions to try to have to get rid of them. We have emotions for a reason. It is okay to tell. It bothers me all the time when we tell youth, especially youth athletes, hey, you can't be upset about losing a game. Don't be upset about this. There's no crying in baseball, the whole nine yards. But that's a normal part of life. I have cried after football games and baseball games and basketball games. I have been sad. I have had to wrestle with the fact that I didn't do what I wanted to do. And there was a certain amount of maybe even shame that came with that. I almost had to mourn some of the difficulties that came in sport. And I really don't see, there is no benefit, guys, to being apathetic. There's no benefit to pushing your emotions into the background, because you're suppressing something you were born with. You're suppressing what God built you. You were inbuilt with emotions so that you can empathize with people, so that you can sympathize, so that you can make decisions. It is not like the rational mind and the emotional mind, if you will, you have to worship one or the other. No, they're like DNA. They're a helix. They have to work together, and in tandem, they can produce good judgments and what have you. But when you bury your emotions, which a lot of men are told to do, you can't be emotional. You can't be that. That's just fake. It's fake. It's macho for no reason. Those kind of men are broken. They don't feel like they can have the opportunity to talk through what they're struggling with. And don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that you should be the other end of the spectrum where everything is a mess and I have to seek out people and tell them all about my emotions and what have you. That's not the place to be either. That group of people is easily manipulated. When you are overly emotional, you are the easiest person to move in a direction because I just have to speak on your emotions. If I make you upset, all of a sudden I can get you to make a decision that you might not make otherwise because all you think with is your emotional brain, if you will. Meanwhile, the person who is stoic and never lets their emotions flow in any capacity, that's a burden. You're becoming numb to the world. You become numb to things that should require you to be upset. I'll use an example. Anything to do with violence towards children, any capacity. To imagine that would not create fury, it's going to be the word I use, at the bare minimum, anger, sadness, confusion, desperation in a way. That is wrong for you to not have that sensation. It wouldn't make you human. Our biggest difference between us and beasts is that we have emotional capacity. It allows us to communicate with one another. But I have met too many men who are just pushing that into the background. They don't want to let out anything. And again, I'm not saying that every day you need to be super emotional. But if there are times where you are struggling with something, there's no shame in shedding tears, especially with family, with your brothers. Doing it publicly for attention is one thing. But privately, when you're struggling with something, that's okay. It's okay to feel anxious and feel like you're overwhelmed. It makes you a human. There's this Goldilocks where we have to find the middle. Not too much, can't have too much emotion. You can't have too little emotion. You have to have just the right amount. And I think that all of us need to take a moment to imagine to ourselves that our emotion has to be tempered by rational thought. We shouldn't be overcome by emotion. I shouldn't be guided fully by it. Just like I shouldn't be guided by completely rational actions. If I'm rational about everything, it's going to be awfully hard for me to communicate with people. How could I be married? My wife is upset about something. Well, rationally, baby, you shouldn't be upset with that because realistically, if we do X, Y, and Z, this is going to solve your problem. Meanwhile, she's looking at me like, are you kidding me, asshole? What are you talking about? I'm not empathizing with the fact that she's an emotional creature. But me being rational and trying to solve something immediately, that doesn't really help our relationship a whole lot, nor does it help you with relationships in the real world. Our emotions are a part of us. Our rational mind is a part of us. But I think as men, we've really pushed ourselves to the extreme in far too large of a capacity. So I want all of you today to understand something. If you know that you are everything kind of triggers you, if you will. You almost have I'm going to use the word frail constitution when it comes to emotional aspects of life. You see something and you're immediately emotional about it. You see something and you're immediately infuriated by it and you can't control it and it consumes you for the rest of the day. You are far too emotional. That has to be kept in check. We cannot lead, we cannot work, we can't protect our families if every single women fancy in the world bothers us. We've lost control. We're giving up control to our emotion. That needs to be corrected. You need to look that in the mirror and go, hey, I'm being a little bit too emotional. I'm allowing this to control me. And you know what's tough is that the only way to get better at it is in the moment, recognize it, and get away from it. I know for a lot of people, this ends up being just getting off of social media or having certain people they just don't spend as much time around because there's certain stimuli that the body wants to get. The world is designed to make us fearful and anxious. That's what all your media shows you. We've talked about this on here before. So if that's something that's creating too much heightened emotion in your life where you're becoming a little bit out of control, get rid of it. Put it away for a while. You have to start working on getting rid of certain stimuli that are making you hyper emotional and focusing on what can I control, what can't I control. It's one of the things I think the Stoics do a good job of explaining is if it's not under my control, I can't worry about it. The other end of this, though, which I think the Stoics get a little bit off, is they talk so much about being, sometimes it can feel a little melancholy, where it's everything is, I can't control this, I'm not worried about it, I'm moving on, whatever. And there's almost an apathetic feeling to some of what they talk about. It's interesting to kind of dig into because that seems to be one of my big problems with some of the teachings there is that it's very driven by, I can't control this. I can only worry about myself. You know, I have to just stay here in my bubble and not be bothered by anything. I can only control my mind and what have you. And I think it gets to the point where it's a little bit too on that far other end where people are just apathetic in a way. On that end of things, yes, you do need to be rational about what's happening around you. It's okay to feel very black and white-ish with things. But you are going to struggle immensely with having relationships in your life if you are constantly so black and white. Because that's just not how humans are. God forbid you try to figure something out like a marriage or dating if you're just always flatlined. It's just not going to work. That doesn't benefit you in any way. You can't empathize with people if you can't somehow put yourself into their shoes. It's impossible. If it doesn't bother you that certain things occur in the world, that's an issue. So it's one of those middle grounds. I talk about this relatively often, personally. So say you turn the news on and a plane crashed in Bangladesh. 110, 115 people die. 15 of those are children. Bunch of moms, dads, fathers, brothers, etc. That should, in every capacity, make you sad. It should bother you that a bunch of people lost their lives tragically. But you should also go, I didn't know those people. I can't do anything about what happened. My heart breaks for those families. But if I allow that into my life too much, it stops me from living my own life and taking care of my own family and my own children. And that doesn't trump my abilities to do those things. On the other side, when that stuff happens and you go, sucks to suck, and you just keep moving forward, that's also a problem. Your relationships are going to struggle because you don't have the ability to see emotion in the world or in yourself. And eventually, in my opinion, because we are emotionally driven beings, that comes to a head in some capacity. And that's when a lot of really bad skeletons come out of the closet. When you push your emotions down long enough, it turns into some kind of uncontrolled fury or anger, and you do stuff that you will regret immensely. On both ends of the spectrum, we can't be in those places. That may seem like a simple conversation for you guys today. However, it matters. I think men have polarized themselves where it's one or the other. We're very stoic. We can't cry. A lot of us can't even friggin' laugh. It's just, we're apathetic. The other side is uncontrolled emotion. Extreme, it's almost a feminine emotion. Everything is tear worthy. Everything is cry worthy. Everything gets us riled up. That's unacceptable as well. There has to be some kind of temper that occurs, or temperance that occurs with your emotions and your rational mind. You have to appreciate the fact that something can be emotional. I can appreciate that I am sad about, I was just I've been writing that new book, which I'm very excited about, but I was working through the introduction and working through the prologue, and I'm writing about my dad, who I've talked on here before, passed away a decade ago. And I got emotional thinking about that. It was an emotional time in my life. However, in the moment, I was emotional. I was sad. I wish my old man was here. However, for the remainder of the day, I wasn't a bumbling, sobbing man. I had my moment. I went, okay, that's the end of it. I miss my old man. I wish he was here. I'd love to have a drink with him and go sit on the porch and talk, but realistically, that's not a thing. So I'm going to go forward and work hard and be the best kind of man that I can. There has to be that combination of the two, though, fellas. And really look at yourself in the mirror today. Look at your own life and go, how am I doing managing my emotions? How am I doing managing my rational mind? Am I being too stoic, too flatlined? Am I being too emotionally controlled? And then start trying to find that middle ground. I wish I could give you the salve or give you the, elixir that would solve that. It's practice. If you're on one or the other end of that spectrum, you have to practice working the other way. If you notice that you're not allowing yourself to be emotional, find people that you can be emotional with, who you can let out what's going on. Maybe that's a therapist. Maybe it's your best friend. I think that's what brothers are for, to be totally honest. You find good men and you talk with them about it. And if they themselves are too stoic and or too emotional, then it's probably time to find somebody else to speak with. But it's important that we find that middle ground, and you can only find it through practice and actually reflecting on how you handle the world. I'm going to leave it at that. I love you all. God bless. Be strong. Like I said, I'm already introduction for the book is first draft is completed. I'm already into part 1. We're going to keep cranking. I'll let you guys know when I get some things set up where I can share out some of the content. But for now, have an incredible Monday, boys. I love you all. Get some today. That's it. We'll see you.